Maryland and Breed, thank you so much for joining us today at the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition.
Of
Really glad to
course.
have you here.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and jump right in. So many media stories in the past few years have framed a narrative that uh, biking and rolling and small business recovery are in opposition. Data tells us that that's not true, but that framing in the media has heightened conflict in corridors such as on Valencia or neighborhoods like Chinatown, and has even led to proposals that the city allow private vehicles back on Market Street. How do you see increases in safe biking and rolling being part of the city's economic recovery?
I think we have to always start from a place of a bigger picture because the city, as we build more housing, which we desperately need to do, we need to make sure that different modes of transportation can move around our city safely and efficiently. And we are starting to see more people use their bikes as their cars instead of a car. And more importantly, it's going to have a tremendous impact on our environment. It will help with congestion. And we have to think about it from a bigger picture. Ultimately, we want to make sure that our public transportation system, our bike network, all of those things work hand in hand so that people can move around the city safely and efficiently. I think when you talk about making changes, it's hard. People are sometimes comfortable with the way that they are, but I've not been afraid of taking risks. I mean, 72% of all the protected bike lanes have been installed under my administration. And we did so in order to make sure that there is a clear path of travel around this bike network that people are starting to use to get to work downtown, to get to different schools to drop their kids off, to move around the city, even in the evening times. It's been a game changer. And so it means we have to make adjustments. What we have to do better as a city is how we communicate with one another, how we bring people to the table on the front end. And Valencia Street is a bit of a complicated situation because ultimately, none of us could predict it that the parklets would be so popular after the pandemic. We were planning to provide protected bike lanes. We moved them in the center because of the insistence upon keeping many of the parklets, and now we're going to be making some adjustments. But ultimately, we need to use this thoroughfare, and we have to do a better job of making sure that people know when you have people who are on bikes, it's oftentimes easier for them to get to your establishment. It's easier to make it a little bit more convenient for people to stop rather than go around in circles to park a car. And how do we increase the business opportunities for those who are part of these neighborhoods? How do we make sure that when we do these projects, they're less intrusive? And how do we help people to understand the bigger picture of what this could mean in terms of growing our city and making it possible for everyone to have equity in terms of their different modes of transportation to move around? It's all of the above. The city is changing. It is not a museum. It can't stay the same. It will change, but we also want to make sure that we are bringing our small businesses along with us, that we're making San Francisco safer and a more efficient modes of transportation to move around. It's really a big part of our strategy to help with the climate and to help make it more of an attractive place for biking and for using public transportation. It's all of the above. And to be very, very clear, because some people think as a result we're anti-car. We're not anti-car. No matter what, a car is going to get there faster than everyone. But ultimately, if you have the ability to use a bike and it's easier to get around, or if you have the ability to take public transportation and it's easier to get around, why wouldn't you choose that as your first option? Mm-hmm. And that's where we got to get to. We got to make this option the first option for everyone, with the understanding that some people aren't going to be willing to, remove themselves from their cars. But can you imagine those 1,000 people who make that decision to get on a bike? That's 1,000 people who armpits you're not smelling in the bus. That's 1,000 people who are not clogging our streets in their vehicles. That's 1,000 people who are helping to save the environment. There's so many benefits to this. And so it's all of the above. And I'm really excited about what our city is going to do in continuing to lead the way.
Great. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Many people, especially Black and Brown people, women and people along the gender spectrum, people with disabilities, people living on a limited income, don't choose to bike or use mobility options because of multiple barriers. Some don't have convenient access, some don't feel safe, some don't feel like they belong in those mobility spaces. How would you continue working to make sure that streets in San Francisco are welcoming to all people?
Well, part of it is building a good quality, safe network. Because when you think about it, if you don't see naturally bike lanes in your neighborhood, you're not going to always think that it's possible for you to use bikes as a mode of transportation for school or for work. And what I've noticed more, you have a lot of parents with their kids. And so we have a new generation of young people who are growing up thinking that the way you get to school is on a bike. And we have to normalize that. But in order to normalize it, we have to make sure that the infrastructure exists in all neighborhoods. And more importantly, we have to make sure that, people don't always have a garage to lock their bike up safely. So when you provide things like bikes that people can rent and get to with clear directions on when they can park them when they're going to a particular location, it's all of the above. It's making it easy, making it friendly, and providing access to allow for people to move around. And also keeping in mind that when you think about, for example, Bayview Hunters Point in the southeast sector of the city, maybe there are older people who may not feel, they may not mind riding a bike in their neighborhood, but they may be uncomfortable using a bike as a commuter tool. That's okay. But now with our new bike trails along the waterfront and other places, we have to make sure people understand the ease of accessing these locations. And part of that is building it. The other part of it is making sure people know it exists and making that ease of connection so that it's a natural part of people's neighborhoods and a place that they're able to use. People who are close to JFK Promenade, they use it all the time because they're right there. People who are close to all of the other, slow streets and other places throughout the city, they use it because they're there. But a lot of folks are using bikes for, how they get around San Francisco. And we want to make sure people know what the different options are and do a lot more outreach in those efforts to get people more interested, especially young people. I'm excited. Today, for example, I saw someone riding their kids on a bike, not a super bus bike, but two kids whose feet almost touched the ground were on this bike. And it reminded me of Amsterdam, where people just hop on, they don't even hold on. I want our city to get to that place where it's normalized. And the more that it's normalized, the more opportunities that will exist for people in other neighborhoods that may have been disenfranchised.
A quick follow-up to that. We talk about bikes a lot, but we ourselves at the Bicycle Coalition are making an adjustment to talk about biking and rolling to take into account all of the other modes that people are taking these days in the bike lane legally. How do you think things like scooters and other mobility options fit into that picture of belonging for all people in San Francisco?
Well, I will say I noticed that there are more people of color using the scooters more so. And even to a certain extent, women with their dresses on. I've seen a lot more of that. And also kids tend to use the scooters. So I think that's a part of the mode of transportation too. And what I'm excited about is even if you can't ride a bike or you may not want to roller skate all the way, there's the opportunity to use a scooter or any mode of transportation with wheels and utilize our bike lanes. And again, a bike network so that the connections are safe and efficient. We want to make sure people are not confused by those connections when you're making a turn off a Market onto Valencia, that they're not so complicated and that it's safe to do so in the midst of significant traffic. We have to make these patterns clear. And then that way people know this is where you belong, this is where the cars belong, this is where the bikes or any kind of wheels that you have that isn't a car, this is where you belong. And it's like how Davis, when I went to college at UC Davis, everything was about having a bike. And part of that was you rode together, you had certain patterns and things just like the wiggle, and you ride together. and there was a biking network. You can almost bike anywhere, and there was some connection at UC Davis because we know it's a bike town. But that's what San Francisco can be too. It can be a bike town where you're able to develop those systems by which people can move around a lot more safely and efficiently.
Great, thank you. So a major reason that San Francisco doesn't reach many of its goals around transportation, whether it's safety, decreasing car dependency, or reaching climate goals, is often a lack of coordination between city agencies. How would you use another term as mayor to ensure that safe and connected bike and roll infrastructure doesn't meet with interagency slowdowns?
So I just want to correct that question just a tad,
Right.
because we have not only met, but we've exceeded our climate goals in San Francisco in advance, so much so that we have set new climate goals that go further than even the state of California and even further than the United States of America. So San Francisco, I feel, has been really a leader in climate action. Of course, more that needs to be done, and I'm excited about finally putting EV charging stations at our parking meters. So we're trying to change the game. And what I would also say is, in terms of coordination from our departments, I am really proud that a lot of our department heads have a really great working relationship, despite some of the issues that we face. One of the biggest challenges I know when we're doing construction projects and making changes is our fire department. And we run into issues around, access to safety, preventative measures, and changes to our street designs to ensure that we're able to change our infrastructure, but also allow emergency vehicles to have access. Now, especially that we're looking to purchase more vehicles that are going to be a lot more compact and work a lot better for a very dense city like San Francisco, I believe that it's going to make for a better opportunity for us to move forward with some of these projects, unlike what we've had to do before. And that is, I think, where the biggest challenge is between public safety, preventative, fire department, and the need to make the changes. And in some instances, we have pushed back to allow for these projects to move forward, and have made some adjustments that would allow for our emergency vehicles, in case of an emergency, to kind of roll over some bollards and do what they need to do to get to a situation. So we've gotten more creative on some solutions rather than in the past. It would just be, no, you can't. Mm-hmm. Now it's, yes, you can, but here's the conditions. That is what we've gotten to. And that is what the work that I'm really proud of and excited about, because it has allowed us, again, under my administration, to do, for example, 72% of all the protected bike lanes, and even more projects to come. And some of the work we've done even around Muni and public transportation, and our red carpet, the BRT, bus rapid transit, all of those things go hand in hand into allowing a better transportation network in San Francisco. And it means not being the no person and saying no all the time, but San Francisco becoming a city of yes. And that's exactly what we're doing. And we're going to keep pushing the envelope and do that to move even more projects towards the future.
Okay, thank you. So we've got 3 more questions, and these are questions that members of ours submitted that they wanted to hear from the candidates about. So the first one is, if reelected, what is the first thing that you would do that you haven't yet done to make our streets safer for people biking, walking, and rolling?
So I would say what we're already trying to do, because it's been tough. We've been able to do some infrastructure improvements, including the bulb outs, the raised sidewalks. I'm a big fan of raised sidewalks. And also more recently, a new addition are the nailed down speed bumps that stop the sideshows and some of the mess that sometimes happen that creates a lot of havoc on our streets. But the thing I'm most excited about, which we're on track to do, speed cameras. And I think that will make a world of difference, especially as we start to put our license plate readers and all the other things that we're doing in the city. But more importantly, as we change our transportation network and make it a little bit more friendly and clear, and in some cases, there are streets that probably are going to have to be closed off for different reasons or another. I think it's going to make it easier for not just bikes to understand what routes they can take to move around the cities, but also cars where they will know where they belong, and we want to cut back on the confusion. That is the biggest thing that I want to be able to accomplish, and why we had to do a complete overhaul to a certain extent of not just picking off one neighborhood at a time. Not just saying we're only going to do this here, we're only going to do a Jamestown bike lane, a Evans Street bike lane to nowhere. How does this all connect with everything, especially as in the shipyard and the Baby Hunters Point, we are adding more housing. We have those bay trails, power station, all those new residents that are going to be coming to the area. How do we create the infrastructure and the places in which people know what they can use? And it's a lot smoother, because right now it's there and it's good. It's not great. It can be so much better. And then finally, what I want to be able to do is make sure that there are better bike parking options that help to reduce theft. So we have to start thinking about what that means. And that means trying to make sure we have some sort of registry, how we are recovering vehicles, because I don't know if people know this, but we recover a lot of stolen vehicles that go unclaimed. So we want to be able to create a better system in light of the fact that we're using drone technology, surveillance technology, speed cameras, and the recovery process could be better, which makes it harder for people to steal, because sadly we have too many bikes being stolen out of garages, and we got to get a handle on that. And so I want to create our network. I want to make this all work for the entire city, where it's so much easier to move around without confusion. And I also want to make sure that we're able to cut back on many of the challenges that sometimes people face with needing to purchase bikes over and over again.
Mm. Great, thank you. And these last two let's do is just quick fire. What's your plan for slow streets and other measures that encourage people who drive to drive slower on or avoid driving completely on certain streets?
Yeah, and I want to be very clear. Slow streets does not mean no cars. It just means slow the heck down. I would curse, but we're being filmed. And so I think that what I have enjoyed the most about how we have allowed slow streets to blossom in this city is on Page and Masonic, for example. People helped to put together this beautiful mural on the street, and people just walked by and participated and made it fun. And what that to me does is it says to people, this is not a street that you shouldn't be speeding anywhere in San Francisco, but this is a street you want to take extra special care with. And I think as we get more creative, similar to what we're doing with JFK Promenade, with all of the interesting art, with all the different street furniture type things that are strategically placed, those are the kinds of things that make people slow down a little bit to say, what is this? What's going on here? Or how do I participate? But more importantly, slow streets bring people together. And one of the reasons why I have waived all fees for anyone who wants to have a block party that doesn't interrupt a major transit line for no more than 3 blocks, we waive all those fees, is because that brings people together. And what I want to be able to do is use our slow streets more, of course, for safety purposes, but a way for neighbors to get to know one another, a way for people to see their friends, a way for us to connect more rather than going through a neighborhood or driving through or speeding through, but how do we engage more with one another with these particular slow streets? That's why they were created. And I think that that's what they're, especially places like Sanchez, that's what it's becoming. And so we're really excited about what that means in terms of redoing it. You said the quick answer, but you get the picture.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Last one. Would you support a moratorium on widening of highways in San Francisco, including the 101, 280, and the Central Freeway, and why or why not?
Yes, I think we're not in a place where we need that in San Francisco. And in fact, when we've taken freeways away, like the Central Subway, not the Central Subway, the one at Hayes Valley and the freeway at Embarcadero. I don't know if you remember, but I remember how dark Hayes Valley used to be. Hayes Valley was Skid Row before that freeway was removed. And it is it's almost unbelievable. It's like night and day, similar to Embarcadero. It was dark. these are places that you didn't go to, and now people are down there running and hanging out, and the ferry building is amazing. And I think that, when you start constructing freeways and things that kind of create a wider footprint for a freeway in a dense urban city like San Francisco, it takes away some of the life and the joy. And my goal is to make our streets safer and better, to make them look better, even as you exit our freeways, to make them a little bit more attractive. But I don't think there's a need to expand our existing freeway footprint, because what exists is sufficient. And I think it works. And I think, if anything, there could be opportunities to remove parts of it, and like just where the hairball is. And I'd like to do something significant around bike travel or roll travel, whatever you want to call it, but stuff with wheels without a possible motor, except there's electric bikes. So you know what I mean.
I do.
So I'd like to do something around that area to make it more of an easier destination to maneuver in. It's already complicated enough for cars, but it could be a real opportunity to allow it to be an important part of path of travel for people to use that for different purposes. And so I know there's a bike lane there, but I just, my goal is to try and make it a little bit easier and clearer with the right kind of signage, with the right kind of lighting, some beautification with some greenery, cleaning it up, making it look better, but allowing for it to be a major thoroughfare, but not interested necessarily in expanding any of our freeways.
Okay. Well, Mayor London Breed, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate having you.
Thank you.